Collected Company, playing against Cory Dissinger, who is on Green-Blue Crush. So this is gonna be wild. Let's jump in and see what happens.
Yeah. So one thing that's going to be interesting to note is this Band Company deck is a lot different than the one we watched last. Previously we had seen Kevin Joes play, tireless trackers and Eldrazi displacers to kind of grind his opponent out. Thomas has a much more aggressive flash style deck. He's got 4 Lambhole Pacifist main, 4 Duskwatch Recruiters, and then he's got extra flash creatures in the form of Bounding Crasises and Void Grafters so that he can play at flash speed a lot better than some of the other Band Company lists.
Oh, Thomas is going to start off with a Duskwatch Recruiter. Cory has a copy of Jace. On his third turn, Thomas has a Evolving Wilds and a Sylvan Advocate. After crashing for 2, just going to pass the turn back. So let's see what Cory can put together.
Yeah, and this, Simic Crush deck, it's got a lot of stuff in it. This is not your normal deck where you see a bunch of 4-ofs and it has a very streamlined game plan. There's only a few 4-ofs in this deck, and there's a lot of 1-ofs. So if you're trying to reverse engineer this deck from home, you're going to have a hard time.
But he is 4-0. Hopefully Cory can pick up some more wins, and maybe we'll get Nick to pull him into the sideboard for a deck tech later on.
Yeah, and Cory discarding the Crush of Tentacles has got to let the cat out of the bag a little bit for Thomas to know what's up, but certainly it's going to be a little confusing for Thomas to figure out what exactly he's up against.
Now Cory's going to play a face down, what appears to be a Den Protector, and pass the turn back. Thomas is going to use Evolving Wilds to find a basic island on Cory's end step. Let's see what he's going to do on his 4th turn. He's got another forest. Going to send his creatures into the red zone. Den Protector is going to block the Duskwatch Recruiter. Cory is going to take 2 points of damage down to 15 from the Sylvan Advocate.
Man, a Dromoka's Command there would have been such a blowout.
Yeah. We have a second Advocate and a Duskwatch Recruiter from Thomas.
And with Thomas not really knowing what exactly he's up against, probably the best thing for him to do is just present as much pressure as possible. A lot of the times, if you just are up against something that you think is weird, just trying to use aggression to the best of your ability is the best game.
Well, here we have a Kiora, Master of the Depths, and Cory's going to -2, which reveals the top 4 cards of your library, and you can choose a creature and or a land card from them, and they go into your hand. So he's going to reveal 4 cards, get a creature and a land. His Jace is now going to be able to transform. So Cory's going to go from having just a Jace on the battlefield to now having 2 Planeswalkers rearing to go.
Yeah, while that is good, there's a good chance that Thomas is going to be able to deal a lot of damage to them. Kiora is certainly not long for this world.
All right, so it looks like Jace is going to transform here after a discarded
Clash of Wills.
Clash of Wills. It looks like Cory does have an Emrakul on his deck, so we might see that at some point.
Yeah, he's got a lot of sweet 1-ofs. It'll be cool to see them get played.
This Kiora seems like a real fast way to turn on Delirium.
Yeah, and also just find the stuff you need that gets paid off by having Delirium. So that's another thing that's pretty cool about it. Thomas is probably just looking at the graveyard to figure out what he might be up against on the following turns.
What is going on here?
But also just what can get flashed back.
Right,
and if Thomas can hit his land drops, these Sylvan Advocates are going to get huge.
Yeah, well, Thomas is able to kill off the Kiora, get some damage in on Cory. Duskwatch Recruiter is going to transform into a Krowlin Horde Howler. And now Cory gets to untap here with Delirium. If he has something like Ishkana in hand, he might be able to utilize that to survive quite a bit. And there we go. No black mana.
It's only a 1-of.
Yeah, it's only a 1-of. He doesn't actually has no black mana in his deck.
But you know, when your deck is like all 1-ofs, you're always going to have like a sweet 1-of to play every turn of the game. Right?
They don't call them fun-ofs for nothing.
Yeah.
So Ishkana Graft Widow is going to bring along some spider babies. Got a 3/5 and 3.
Wow, and no collected company end of turn. That's pretty crazy. So I wonder what Thomas plans on doing here. Not doing anything with his mana on turn 4 is kind of a big deal. And the fact that he can't pressure this Jace now is a little bit of a problem. The surge on the Crush of Tentacles is something that Thomas may need to worry about.
Man, I hope we see a Surge Crush of Tentacles get cast.
Also, just need to applaud Ishkana for its ability to stabilize the board here.
All right, well, Thomas is going to be able to bounce the Ishkana with the Reflector Mage. Some spiders are going to play chump duty.
Yeah, and what's nice about that attack is he gets to clear the spiders, because if Cory tried to have all of them gang block the Howler to kill it, that meant that the Sylvanicus would do a lot of damage to that Jace.
Well, he's not going to be able to replay an Ishkana this turn, but it will be coming down next turn. So there's a Traverse the Ulvenwald. Let's see what Cory's
I
going
vote
to go
Emrakul. I want to see Emrakul real bad.
He does have 4.
Oh, he just got a land.
He does have 4 Noose Constrictor.
Yeah.
He is just going to get a land. Okay. He's going to minus his Jace and Crush of Tentacles out of the graveyard.
Nice. And this is a cool card. I'm sure a lot of you aren't familiar with it, but it is quite powerful.
Yeah, so the Surge is 5, and it returns all non-land permanents to the owner's hands, and if you played the Surge cost, you also get an 8/8. So he was able to traverse for a land, to play his 6th land, flashback Crush of Tentacles with the Jace, puts the Jace back in his hand, and if he has a land next turn, we could just see like a Jace plus Ishkana turn.
Yeah. And
unfortunately, that Reflector Mage does not like 8/8 tokens.
Yeah, I was just going to say the 8/8 is really sweet, but it's not at its best against a Bant Company deck, unfortunately. That said, Cory will probably be able to play more 8/8 tokens than Thomas can actually bounce. So,
although, I mean, every time you crush, you just put the Reflector Mages back into Thomas's hand.
Yeah, that's right. I guess you're right.
So, as cool as this Crush of Tentacles is, maybe the Reflector Mage deck is not really where it shines.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Cory has a pretty big mana advantage right now. Tommy's just going to replay his Duskwatch Recruiter.
The other thing, too, is with monstrous cards like Emrakul, Thomas probably just is looking to buy time and build up his mana until he can cast an Emrakul. And then, you just get to go Emrakul, Crush of Tentacles, bounce it, play it again, and just have all kinds of shenanigans.
All right, so Cory's going to play, and this is Pilgrimage, and that's going to be snagged by a Spell Queller.
And Cory isn't actually set up particularly well to fight Spell Queller. I mean, he can Crush of Tentacles to bounce it, but he doesn't actually have a good way to kill it. He doesn't actually have a good way to kill anything.
He's just looking to bounce it.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, when he bounces that Spell Queller, then he gets a card.
Yep.
So it's Crush of Tentacles is a pretty sweet way to fight Spell Queller.
Yeah.
Here we just have a face-down Den Protector. And once again, we see Ishkana doing very good at clogging up the ground.
Yeah. And, I mean, at this point, Thomas has got to be starting to get a little worried, because he's probably saying to himself, I don't know what I'm up against. I don't know why this deck is 4-0. I don't know why I have to face it in the feature match area. This is where your palms start to sweat, knees weak, arms are spaghetti.
Yeah. All right, well, Cory is going to use his Den Protector to get back Traverse. He's going to cast that Traverse. And he does have Delirium. So maybe we just go find Emrakul here.
Do it. Do it.
And we do. There's the Promised End.
And it's kind of nice because he can, he's going to be able to take Thomas's turn and make Thomas do some unprofitable attacks, tap out all of his mana. He can just run the Spell Queller into Ishkana if he wants, or run the Reflector Mage into some creatures.
And we're going to have another Surged Crush.
Oh, wow.
So he's going to get an 8/8, get back his Den Protector and his and his Ishkana, and cast the the Nissa's Pilgrimage. Go get a bucket load of forests.
Yep.
One into play tapped, one in his hand. Play one for the turn, pass the turn back. You can Reflector Mage this 8/8, but I'm playing Emrakul next turn, my friend.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
This is pretty cool. Wow, and Thomas just scoops it up. Says, well, I probably can't beat this because...
He doesn't want Cory to see his hand.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think everything in his hand is just the same stuff that was on the board 2 minutes ago. But I think the main problem for Thomas is this Crush deck. It's going to play Emrakul, and Thomas probably can't really deal with it. And if he can, it's probably in the form of bouncing it, in which case it's going to get cast again. And anyway. Well,
let's take a look at the player sideboards. Cory Dissinger is going to take this first game on his green-blue Crush deck against Tommy Ashton. Tommy has 2 Tireless Tracker, 4 Negate, 2 Ojutai's Command, 1 Declaration in Stone, 1 Summary Dismissal, 2 Selfless Spirit, 1 Hallowed Moonlight, and 2 Thalia Heretic Cathar. How do you think he's going to sideboard?
So I think the Negates are going to be coming in just as a way to counter Crush and Tentacles. I think there's some merits to having Ojutai's Command also. A lot of these creatures, he just doesn't want them to hit play, like Nissa, Jace, Ishkana. So I think the counter magic is going to excel.
Now on Cory's side, we have 1 Worldbreaker, 1 Ishkana Graph Widow, 1 Summary Dismissal, 4 Death Misraptor, 1 Void Shatter, 1 Clash of Wills, 2 Negate, 2 Aerial Volley, and 2 Gnarlwood Dryad. How do we think he's going to side?
So I think he's going to be treating this like a situation where he wants to defend against aggression. So I think the Ishkana is going to come in for that reason. I think Death Misraptor can do a lot of work in this sort of situation, just clogging up the board. Aerial Volley is a good way to take care of the... Oh, I'm blanking on their name.
Spellqueller.
There we go. Thank you. And Gnarlwood Dryad is also a card that seems like it has some merits as playing defense against these Bant Company decks.
Well, I can agree with that. So this weekend we're in Baltimore. Next weekend we're going to take a weekend off because of the Pro Tour. Mm-hmm. But for those of you who aren't going to Australia for the Pro Tour, you can
Maybe you have a visa issue?
Maybe you have a visa issue. Or maybe you just want to play in the SCG Regionals. So
yeah, Regionals is great.
So stay tuned if you want to learn a little bit more about that. Let's go ahead and take a look.
Don't miss the StarCityGames.com Regional Championships. On August 6th, play Standard at one of the many regional locations across the US and Canada. The first 200 players to register for each event will receive a Hot Pursuit playmat and token just for signing up. Regional Championships are part of the SCG Tour with SCG points for all players. Champions will earn an exclusive trophy, and all top 8 competitors will receive a playmat, pin, share of $5,000, and a spot in an upcoming SCG Invitational. Visit go.starcitygames.com/regionals to learn more.
Welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that quick little blurb commercial about the SCG Regionals next weekend. I'm a big fan of those types of events.
Yeah, they're great.
I love all the sweet playmats, and this one you even get a sweet token, and the goblin's name is, not again.
I also just like the idea of just being the champion of your region. You know, it's just like all the local stores know you, and I like regionalism.
Now, this Crush of Tentacles deck seems pretty sweet.
Yeah, it does seem pretty sweet.
What if fast forward 7 days, 7 days, 8 days from now, and we're looking at the top 8 of the Pro Tour in Sydney, and there's just this green-blue Crush of Tentacles deck.
That would be cool. I'm not gonna lie.
How awesome would that be?
Yeah, I wonder. It has some good things going on with it. I, in particular, like that it is mono stuff. There's
mono stuff.
Yeah, there's no real reactive elements, and it's playing a game plan that can basically ignore what other people are doing and just do its thing, which is something that I really like in a deck. I like playing interactive games of Magic, but I like it the most when I can just have the option to ignore what my opponent's doing. That's where I feel like I'm at my most advantaged.
All right, so we're going to start off our second game here. Thomas Ashton is going to be on the play. He has a Lumbering Falls. Cory's just going to take a point of damage from his Yavimaya Coast to traverse up a basic land. Pass the turn back. Let's see what Tommy has for his second turn. One interaction that I've been impressed with this round and even last round with watching Robert, and even going back to Todd's match with the Green-Black Delirium deck, being able to utilize Den Protector and or Jace to replay Traverse seems real sweet.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, if the mana was able to support it, a Sultai version of some sort of Delirium deck would be really, really sweet. But it's pretty hard to play 3-color decks in this format.
Well, Cory has a Jace on his second turn and passes. Tommy is just going to play a land and pass back, transforming his Duskwatch Recruiter into a Kralin Horde Howler. He does not have any white mana available, though, so there is no fear of a Spell Queller. This Nissa's Pilgrimage is going to go get 2 Forest for Cory, put 1 onto the battlefield, 1 into his hand. And here we have a Bounding Krasis.
Yeah, and this is one thing that's cool about Thomas's specific build of Bant Company is he's able to just have all these flash threats, which go really well with Spell Queller, also go really well with the werewolves that he's playing. He's just able to flip them so much more easily. I think this is definitely the best version of Bant Company for not only Spell Queller, but also Lambholt Pacifist.
All right, so Thomas does have a 4th land here. Still no white mana. He is going to crash in for 6 with his Bounding Krasis and his
7.
Kralin Horde Howler.
Yeah, he gets to whack him for 7.
Oh, that is a Butcher. I thought that was a Howler. So he's going to attack in for 7 with the Howler.
And we
this
saw
screams Collected Company.
Yeah, we saw last time that Thomas didn't actually have a turn 4 play, which I think is part of the reason that he lost. But we'll see if he is able to have one here.
All right, so Cory has a land here and a copy of Noose Constrictor. So this is going to be very good at playing defense.
It will. It doesn't play defense that great against a 3/3 and a 4/4, though, because if Cory wants it to be able to trade in combat, he's going to have to discard a card. That said, it is kind of a nice Delirium enabler.
Delirium Enabler and can just allow him to transform this Jace on command.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually a great point, is you can play turn 2 Jace, turn 3 play Noose Constrictor, pass, and then if your opponent attacks, you can just make your Noose Constrictor huge and flip your Jace. That's a pretty sweet line of play. I mean, it's pretty expensive in terms of card advantage.
But then you get to flash back the cards you discarded.
Yeah. It's not my favorite, but it's certainly something worth noting.
So let's see what else Cory is going to do here. I'm a little surprised that Tommy didn't collect the company in response to the Noose Constrictor.
Just to try to tag it with a Spell Queller?
Potentially hitting it with a Queller.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to discard a Pulse of Marasa to the Noose Constrictor. Jace is going to loot. Now this will transform Jace when it resolves.
Are there 4 cards in the graveyard?
There are now.
Okay.
It looks like there's 4. It looks like the graveyard's cut off at the bottom a little bit.
If he is able to flip the Jace, I would kind of expect him to block first and then flip the Jace.
Well, here is a company in response. Yeah, so Jace is on the stack.
Man.
Oh, and it's only going to hit a
really
Lambholt
unfortunate
Pacifist.
for Thomas. You live by the company, but unfortunately you also die by the company. Kind of a high variance card.
All right, so it looks like we got confirmation. There is currently 4 cards in the graveyard. So this discard is going to transform Jace.
Wow, and Cory discards a Clash of Wills, so he could have actually countered that Collected Company, chose not to.
He's going to Pulse of Marasa, back the Den Protector. That's interesting that he didn't counter that Collected Company. Maybe he's just played this so much that he knows it doesn't matter.
Well, if he's planning on using Crush of Tentacles to bounce the board, then maybe
really
that's
matter.
part of the reason.
All right, so he went ahead and used the Jace minus on the Bounding Krasis. His Werewolf is going to transform back because there were 2 spells cast by Cory. And now Tommy just doesn't even have any good attacks here.
Yeah, well, he doesn't have any attacks if these werewolves don't flip. So.
All right, well, here we have a Duskwatch Recruiter.
He can attack with his 1/2 Krasis, but that's not such a good idea. A White Source and a Dromoka's Command would be one of his best options, but he is in a rough shape. His Collected Company didn't hit. He doesn't have white mana. He's up against the deck that he probably doesn't know exactly what's going on. This is a rough spot for our good friend Thomas.
All right, well, we're going to get a flashback on Traverse. He's going to play it. Just going to get a land. I smell Crush of Tentacles.
Yeah.
And if Tommy doesn't find a White Source to be able to Reflector Mage this Crush of Tentacles, that 8/8's going to start being able to attack.
Yeah, the 8/8's a big game. I mean, if you don't have a card like Reflector Mage, it's pretty hard to deal with an 8/8 Octopus token. You can't Grasp and Darkness it. You can't, or you're unlikely to be able to Dromoka's Command it. You know, no red removal is going to be able to deal with it. It's really just Reflector Mage, Ultimate Price, Runus Path. I guess Declaration of Stone also.
Well, Thomas had a copy of Negate to stop the shenanigans, so that Jace could be killed this turn.
Yeah, certainly has to be on the top of Thomas's priority list. Still no white mana, though, which is quite unfortunate. He does have a Lumbering Falls, which is kind of a nice pickup, but...
Let's see where Thomas decides to attack this turn.
Actually, can he even kill the Jace? Oh, yeah, because the Jace... No, he can't kill the Jace, because Cory can just block the 3/3 Krasis, and the Duskwatch Recruiter will not kill the Jace.
We'd have to use Lumbering Falls.
Yeah, he would have to use Lumbering Falls to kill it.
So he's going to take a point of damage to activate his Lumbering Falls and look at killing that Jace.
And this is going to use Thomas's entire turn. But what is nice about this is it'll flip both of all the werewolves. That said, Cory's deck seems to be good at casting 2 spells in a turn to flip them back, considering it is a deck built on a Surge card.
Here we get to see if he decides to cash in 2 cards in his hand with that Noose Constrictor to kill one of Thomas's attackers.
Yeah, Noose Constrictor playing a pseudo Force of Will role where you're basically able to discard 2 cards from your hand to kind of counter a spell. In this case, it's counter something that's already in play.
All right, he is not. He is just going to let his Jace die. And we're going to go into Cory's turn. So let's see what he is able to find here.
2 spells would be really good. Like a spell and a Crush of Tentacles would be great.
So it looks like Tommy flipped 2 of his werewolves, but not the 3rd. I think that all 3 of them are supposed to flip.
I do agree also. See if they resolve this. Oh, Rogue's Passage. That's another one of those sweet one-ofs.
That's a spicy little number.
That's something that we haven't seen in a while either. It is a card that can be powerful. So it looks like the players are taking a minute to figure out what to do with that Duskwatch Recruiter. But, you know, what do you really think of this blue-green Crush deck? Simic Crush is...
I think I think it's awesome. One interaction that we haven't seen yet is that he has 1 Hangerback Walker in his deck.
Yeah.
So technically on turn 5, if he needs to, he can Hangerback for 0 and then Crush to make an 8/8, which is real cute. But this deck seems like there might be something here.
Yeah, one thing that I really like about it is if you look at the control decks, they're almost all based on killing creatures. Even though this is a creature deck, it's kind of good against removal. Like it has the Den Protector Deathmiss Raptor package, and the really powerful things that it's doing are Crush of Tentacles, Emrakul, Ishkana, Planeswalkers. So it seems like it's set up pretty well to fight the black-based control decks. And without a counterspell-heavy control deck in the format, I think that a strategy like this can be quite good. So
I agree. I'm honestly a little surprised that this isn't an Ale and Trazi deck.
Yeah, it does seem...
Because this looks a lot like an LA Eldrazi deck. But Ishkana without black mana isn't something new. Eric Rill had 2 Ishkana in his green-white tokens deck that he was able to top 8 with last weekend, which is pretty exciting. There's just so much sweet stuff going on in this deck. Man, I can't wait to see how well Cory does in this tournament, because I'd love for this deck to get a little more press and potentially become something that actually happens.
And it has like a pretty decent curve, so it's not going to get run over that easily. If it does fall behind, it has access to Crush of Tentacles to essentially catch back up. So it seems like it's positioned pretty well where it's difficult for someone to rush it down, but it's also difficult for someone to grind it out.
All right, so we're going to come back. It looks like Cory is able to flip the werewolves back with an Oath of Nissa and a face-down Den Protector.
And now we're back to Thomas's turn, who has, not really any good attacks. With Cory being at 18, Thomas is really far away from closing out this game. And considering he still doesn't have white mana, this is a rough spot.
Now that Den Protector is going to be able to get back Crush of Tentacles if he so desires. All those werewolves are going to flip though, but without white mana, Thomas needs to have something like Negate here. Otherwise, we're going to see an 8/8.
Yeah, and the other thing that's a little worrisome for Thomas is he just still doesn't have white mana. So if that Crush of Tentacles does resolve, it's going to be hard for Thomas to deal with that token.
All right, so he will activate Duskwatch Recruiter with the trigger on the stack. He's going to find a Reflector Mage. All of the werewolves are going to transform. Cory does have 7 mana at his disposal, so any 2-drop plus, well, now 8 mana, so any 2 or 3 drop plus Crush of Tentacles. All right, so there's a face-down Den Protector and a Crush.
And this is nice because if the Crush gets countered, he has the face-down Den Protector to just get it back again next turn to recast.
This is also going to put Oath of Nissa back in his hand that he'll be able to replay.
Yeah, and also just the Den Protectors. I mean, he can just Crush of Tentacles like every single turn from here. And it's not even like he has to really worry about a counterspell, because he has multiple Den Protectors.
Yeah, well, he can Den Protector to get back the Crush of Tentacles, and then play the other Den Protector and a Crush to return them all.
This almost reminds me of a Turbo Fog deck.
Yeah.
That's what it reminds me of. Yeah, I would say in order to beat this green-blue Crush deck, really feel like you need a counterspell-based control deck, or maybe a ramp deck that's just going World Breakers to pop his lands.
Just like way over the top.
Into like Ugins, yeah. The other thing too is with the high land count that Cory's playing, and cards like Nissa to get extra lands, and Nissa's Pilgrimage. It's much easier for him to replay all of his stuff as compared to Thomas.
All right, so there is a Jace and an Oath of Nissa. We've got...
And this is a riot. I mean, what's Thomas to do from here? Cory just has literally infinite Crush of Tentacles.
To be fair, Thomas does not have any white sources, and that's like really, really hurting this entire game, but even still. Oh, it looks like that's a Nissa instead of a Jace.
But now that we're at this point, I mean, there's a good chance we would have gotten to this point at some point.
Yeah.
So, like, what are you supposed to do against Den Protector Crush of Tentacles?
I don't know. All right, well, Nissa is going to be flipped. Just going to pass the turn back.
He still has no white mana.
Still no white mana. This is real rough for Thomas.
Yeah, brutal. And the shields are up. The card advantage is online. I guess the card advantage is no longer online. That was a good move from Thomas.
Yeah, Bounding Krasis is going to be able to tap down Noose Constrictor. Sylvan Advocate can get in for 4 and kill the Nissa. But we still have this Rogue's Passage alongside an 8/8 that we can just make unblockable.
So 2 things worth noting. First of all, Thomas is actually still able to play a pretty fair game despite having no white mana. The other thing worth noting is because of the way he's built his deck, he actually only has a total of 12 white cards, and he's actually only playing, it looks like 10 white sources of mana.
Yeah, so it looks like we just shortcutted Den Protector for Surge with Crush, and he can just attack for 8 and then crush again if he needs to.
Yeah, and so basically what I was saying before was that Thomas has built his deck in a way where he's much more focused on just the green-blue cards. So he's trimmed the white spells, also trimmed the white mana.
Oh, well, Tommy is just going to scoop it up in the face of Den Protector Crush.
Well, yeah, I think he has enough mana to just start chaining them all together. I think he had 10 mana.
Yeah, he could do it every turn.
Yeah, so just every single turn. Pretty unreal. Pretty unreal.
Wow, all right. Well, Cory Dissinger is going to take that match 2-0 over Thomas Ashton with his green-blue Crush deck. So for those of you who are watching at home and would like to see a deck tech for this green-blue Crush deck, make sure you tweet at us and tag SCG Live and Nick Miller to see if maybe we can get him in the booth, because that deck looks sweet.